over 100 local, state, national, and international organizations, a coalition of over 100 organizations have come together, being led by the Nigerian Center in Washington, D.C., and they are calling on President Biden, the administration, to protect the undocumented Nigerians in the U.S. that are fleeing civil unrest, and also grant immediate temporary protection status. To talk about that, I'm so excited to have with us on the record is the president of the Nigerian Center, Gbenga Ogunjimi. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Let's talk about first what is happening in Nigeria that is leading to this request.
We know for over a decade, Nigeria has been in active armed conflict with the Boko Haram insurgency, terrorism, religious persecution, on a wide scale of kidnapping violence across the country. There are also several separationist groups across the north and the south with agitations. Also with the fact that Nigeria is currently in one of the most challenging economic chapters of this country, the country's existence. So because of that, we are calling on this administration to extend TPS protection to Nigerians who currently live in the United States. TPS have been afforded to several countries going through similar challenges, and we are taking this opportunity to ask that the Biden administration extend such to our community as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that. We've seen it happening they extended it for Cameroon, we've seen it for Afghanistan, and most recently Ukraine. And so I know as you're seeing what's happening in Ukraine and you're seeing what the U.S. is doing with those people, I'm sure in your heart you're like, okay, now can we extend this list and put Nigeria on it as well?
Yes, yes. And particularly as the United States redefines its engagement with the African continent, with this new administration, looking at ways in which to improve and elevate the relationship. I think this is a unique opportunity for the United States to demonstrate commitment and stand with Nigeria at these very trying times. We know that Nigeria is an important ally for the United States on the continent of Africa, and happenings in Nigeria is not just restricted to the West African region, it has global ramifications. So that is a reason, among a slew of other reasons, we think this is very timely for the country.
Now, for those who may not know, during the Africa Summit that happened in January, the administration did unveil its U.S. strategy towards sub-Saharan Africa, and that talked about engagement throughout the diaspora. You mentioned why this relationship is so important. Can you talk about why that connection is beneficial and with the U.S.?
Particularly in that strategy you mentioned, when the White House put forward this U.S.-Africa strategy, I think the important piece of language there worth noting is this new definition of African diaspora. And that definition encompasses both African Americans, recent African immigrants, those who are previously enslaved descendants in the United States. So it's a very broad definition. And we know that Nigeria continues to be one of the largest ancestral home of the global diaspora. We know Nigeria American community is one of the most significant, largest immigrant groups in the country. So we're looking at the size of that community. We're looking at the position of that community. We're looking at the status of that community. So I think there's an unparalleled opportunity for this administration to demonstrate and bring life to those commitments to Africa. And when we look at historically, when we look at trade or bilateral partnerships, there's always been criticism that it doesn't always touch the average person on the ground. But there's an opportunity for the U.S. to directly invest into Nigerians who are currently in the United States. And if you allow me to add also, we know that TPS holders and those who are eligible contribute north of $22 billion to U.S. economy. We know this is not a right. This is why we are petitioning for this, just to give them the opportunity to contribute as well. But that singular status is going to make that possible.
What has been the reaction, or have you had a reaction from the administration? Have you heard from Secretary Mayorkas with the Department of Homeland Security?
I can confirm that this morning we did receive a response back, and we're coordinating the listening sessions. We're coordinating the dates with the subject matter experts and relevant NGO groups that are part of this coalition to further amplify our message to the administration. So I think that is a very positive response given the timeline that we just requested for this status. So we've heard back from them and we're in communications with them.
And they haven't given you necessarily a timeline on when, but you are coordinating the details on that?
Yes, I think at this time is a listening session. The first was a letter. I think there's an opportunity for relevant stakeholders to further make presentations and even amplify what was written in the letter and make them actually see the conditions on the ground. Hopefully, we also have those who have been particularly directly affected to tell their stories and just to humanize what is going on the ground.
For African Americans here in the U.S., explain why this is an issue that affects African Americans as well, and why we need to also care about this issue.
Well, I think the reason why this affects African Americans and affect everyone here is because, as I mentioned, that when we look at the African community, African American community, those of us who immigrated here from the Africa, we are also considered as African Americans. So this is a community-wide impact. And in the same community, as we wrestle with our various fair share of challenges, systemic issues, marginalization, the marginalization this particular community is going through is the fact that a recent report has recently indicated that there are over 60,000 undocumented Nigerians. So these are people who don't have the opportunity to fend for their family, they don't have the opportunity to work. There might also be people who are currently in detention. So I think there's an opportunity when you talk about immigration reform, prison reforms, the same pain points that affects the African American community also affect the African immigrant. I think this collective shared interest is an opportunity for us to really respond to the pain points that in this case happens to affect Nigerian American community. And also, as I mentioned, Nigerian American or Nigerian living in America is not just the immigrant. We know that the vast majority of African Americans, the ancestry, come from Nigeria. With Afrobeat culture, there's a lot of interest in connecting to the Nigerian culture like never before. People just want to have a place called home. And I think this is an opportunity to make it safe for everyone.
What do you say to those who criticize TPS and say that it is a backdoor to citizenship?
It is not. The TPS does not provide a pathway to citizenship. As the name indicates, it's a temporary protection, it's a temporary measurement to save lives. It doesn't have a path to green card or city or naturalization. What the beneficiaries would get is work authorization and protection from being deported. And it's only for 18 months. There might be an opportunity to petition again for the renewal or extension. So this is not a pathway to citizenship. But I think most importantly, there's an opportunity to save lives. I'm going to tell those people to think about the sanctity of life. And if they have the opportunity to save life wherever they are in the world, would they extend that opportunity to them? So I think it's an opportunity to really save lives at this critical time.
Gbenga, how is the Nigerian Center educating clients about the immigration process in the U.S.? And then lastly, tell us a little bit more about what you do at the center.
So recently, earlier this month, the president had the State of the Union address. We at the Nigerian Center had a State of the Union on immigration. And we got policy experts to weigh in on immigration as it relates to the African community. We know historically, we think about immigration, we think about crisis on the southern border. There's an opportunity. So we are not only just educating folks, we are amplifying the pain points of our community. So we host Know Your Right immigration workshops. We have a walk-in immigration clinic. Anybody in our community, they don't have to be Nigerians, can pick up the telephone or just walk into the center to get legal education, counseling, consultation, and sometimes even full representation. Our mission is to foster financial inclusion. So we do so by providing asset building programs. We have home ownership programs, access to capital opportunities, and we do cultural programs to connect folks to the Nigerian cultural heritage.
Wow. Thank you for the work that you are doing at the Nigerian Center. I know that Nigeria had those elections coming up.
It happened over the weekend already.
It happened over the weekend. It happened over the weekend. And that's why within this time, this is so important. How soon or how quickly would you like for this to happen?
We know that TPS was granted. I think the fastest we've ever seen in history was 80 for 9 days. And second to that was Ukraine for 2 weeks.
Yes.
We pray that is the story. We pray that what happened for our own coalition as well. I should also mention, since you mentioned the election, that over the past 3 to 4 administration in Nigeria, there's heightened hope that the security concerns in the country is going to be fixed once and for all, but that has not been the case. For every administration, we see this force, this very diabolical insurgency, increase in sophistication and intensity. What we are asking for, that this new incoming administration gets into the leadership. We want people's life to be protected while we give them the opportunity to have a strategy over the country's political, economic, and security of lives. So I think this is important. It's even more important as this new administration comes in.
Thank you so much, Gbenga Ogunjimi, for coming on the record with American Urban Radio Network. I would love to have you come back and let's continue this issue and also talk about what's happening on the ground in Nigeria within government to help kind of curb the violence that is happening, and then also what can happen here in the U.S. to aid and support the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you.